Welcome to the Secure the Grid Coalition's YouTube channel. The Secure the Grid Coalition is a group of policy, energy, and national security experts dedicated to strengthening the resilience of America's electrical grid. It's sponsored by the Center for Security Policy, a 501c3 nonprofit which receives no funding from governments, foreign sources, the electric industry, or any for-profit corporations involved in protecting the grid. Why is this important to you? All 330 million people in America are plugged into a life support system known as the electric grid. Everything your family needs to survive depends on the electric grid. Food, water, wastewater systems, communications, emergency services, transportation, and medical. All 16 critical infrastructure sectors in the United States depend on the electric grid. One of the coalition's esteemed colleagues, George Cotter, God rest his soul, he was the former chief scientist at the NSA, and he famously said, "Our lights are on at the discretion of the Russians and the Chinese." Think about that. What you've just witnessed has a 100% chance of happening if we do not take action to protect the grid. More on that later. In 2021, U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm confirmed publicly that the Russians, Chinese, and possibly others have the ability to shut down the electric grid. In 2017, the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs issued a report. This report is publicly available. Let's see what the report said. The report said that a successful nuclear electromagnetic pulse attack against the United States could cause the death of approximately 90% of the American population. And you might be thinking to yourself, that's crazy. There's no possible way 90% of the American population. Okay, let's say it's 40% of the American population. That's 130 million people. Is that an acceptable amount of deaths due to the loss of the electric grid? Well, how about 4%? 4% is 13 million people. So there is no number that you can put on this. So if you don't like the 90%, put whatever number you want on it. But the bottom line is, if we have a long-term widespread grid outage, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people will perish. Now, that was not the first time Congress had talked about this or had been informed about this. In 1981, GAO, which is at the time was the government the General Accounting Office. Now it's known as the Government Accountability Office, still GAO. But they issued a report in 1981 that if saboteurs, terrorists, or an enemy attacked the nation's power system, would the federal government be prepared to handle the resulting energy disruptions? And the answer was no, back in 1981. And this report was about physical attacks. And this is what the GAO said. I'm not going to read it all. The report is publicly available. But the thing is, Congress has known since 1981 at least that our grid is susceptible to physical threats. And we know from Department of Energy information that there have been hundreds and hundreds, actually over 1,000 physical attacks on the electric grid since 2010. According to the Department of Energy data, there have been over 1,100 physical attacks against the grid. That's 44% of the reported disturbances against the grid. There have also been 1,300 weather-related grid emergencies. So those are the biggest two. To give you a couple of examples, Hurricane Maria in September 2017 in Puerto Rico, nobody even knows how many people died. And we will never know how many people died, because in addition to the people who died in the initial, hurricane and the disaster, a lot of people died as a result of the collapse of the infrastructure in Puerto Rico. Food, water, for those who remember Hurricane Maria, absolutely horrible. And that was an outage that was in a local area, Puerto Rico, an island, and we could get resources to it from elsewhere in the country and elsewhere in the world. Now, the difference between a widespread outage like a blackout of the United States is that where are you going to bring resources from? Everybody's in the same boat, same emergency. Look at the Texas grid collapse in February of 2021. Where over 250 people died as a result of literally a one-day power outage. Now, there are other threats to the grid besides weather. We've got solar flare, or GMD. That was the video that I just showed you. There have been numerous GMDs in the past. One of note was in 1989, the Quebec power outage, which caused a massive power outage in Quebec due to solar weather, or a solar flare, geomagnetic disturbance. You'll hear it called several things, but that has 100% chance of happening again. The sun throws out coronal mass ejections in all directions, every day, all the time. And once in a while, one of those will hit the path of Earth. And once it interacts with our magnetic field, it causes geomagnetic disturbance, which can fry our large transformers. The problem with that, to replace one transformer can take 2 to 3 years. Now, just imagine if all of our transformers get fried by a major solar flare. Every 100 to 150 years, there's a huge one. And the last really, really big one was known as the Carrington event. It was in 1849. We're a little overdue. Now, another threat is cyber attacks. And we hear about these a lot. And there's been a lot of press on the fact that the Russians and the Chinese are residing comfortably in our electric grid. And as our colleague George Cotter said, our lights are on at the discretion of the Russians and the Chinese. A terrorist attack. We saw a spectacular terrorist attack in 9/11. But that was a very, very complex and difficult attack. You're talking about hijacking several airplanes and running them into buildings. But we've seen news reports about the physical attacks against the electric grid. Most of them don't get reported by the news. Like I said, since 2010, there have been over 1,000 physical attacks against the electric grid. And for those of you who are walking your dog down the street through the neighborhood and you see that transformer substation behind the chain link fence, and basically it is just guarded by a chain link fence and crossed fingers. Our transformer substations are very, very soft targets for the most part for a terrorist attack. We've also got earthquakes that can cause outages. Pandemics can cause outages. They're actually listed by the Department of Energy as an event that could cause widespread power outages. An EMP weapon, which functions, that would be human controlled. So if you detonate a nuclear bomb in space over the United States, it'll cause an electromagnetic pulse, which operates very, very similarly to the geomagnetic disturbance, the solar flare. It's the same type of thing. It would fry our transformers, and when the transformers are gone, we're done. We cannot replace our transformers in a timely manner. And we don't have a lot of spares lying around either. So once these transformers go down, we do not get the power grid back for months or years, if ever at all. Then you've also got human error, computer error, and the tree branch is a reference to the Great Northeast Blackout of 2003, where 55 million people were put out of power, 45 million in the United States, 10,000 or 10 million in Canada, due to untrimmed foliage hitting some transmission lines in Ohio and causing a cascading blackout of the entire Northeast United States. So our grid is susceptible to both humans and nature in terms of threats. Why is it the U.S. is not prepared for a national scale catastrophe such as the long-term loss of the electric grid? For one, we tend to prepare for disasters we've seen in the past. The routine power outages, from, hurricanes or weather or something, that we've seen in the past. And as I mentioned with like, take, for example, Hurricane Maria or Hurricane Katrina or Hurricane Andrew, they were in localized areas. I mean, they were pretty big areas, but we could bring in resources from the outside. That is what our emergency management system depends on. It absolutely depends on being able to bring in resources from the outside. If the incident overwhelms the local resources and the state resources, then you bring in the federal government. But if the entire country, if 55 million or 55,000 towns and cities in the United States are all blacked out at the same time, where are you going to bring the additional resources from? We've never experienced a national scale loss of infrastructure in the United States, but such a disaster is a possibility. And as I said, if we don't protect the grid, there is a 100% chance that the sun is going to do it, even if the terrorists don't. And so what's the plan? If there's a national scale disaster, there is no plan. We do not have a national plan to handle a large scale national long-term blackout. We do not. So in comes the Secure the Grid Coalition. What I want to tell you a little bit about what we do, what our volunteers in this coalition are doing to try to protect you and your family. One thing is we work with media outlets. We try to get the word about the stories. Our members have been seen on 60 Minutes. We've been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and other major publications talking about the threats to the electric grid. We've been on CNN. We've been on Fox News. We've been on Chris Cuomo. We've been on as many media places as we can get to try to get the word out about threats to the grid. There's an important new documentary that some of our members have been involved and were actually interviewed for, called Grid Down, Power Up. It's narrated by Dennis Quaid, who is a great colleague of ours who really believes in this cause of protecting the electric grid. The movie was produced and directed by David Tice, who also is one of our colleagues in the Secure the Grid Coalition. We also brief state and federal lawmakers, government agencies, and the public. We research and write authoritative reports on grid security. And we fight for your family before the federal government in federal dockets with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, with the Department of Energy, with every government agency that has a piece of regulating the electric grid. We're there. Actually, one of our members is suing the federal government right now to protect the grid. And in this lawsuit, we are trying to end the cover-up of the names of violators of companies who do not meet the standards for grid security. And our lawsuit is asking that the government reveal the names of these companies. Here's what you can do. Number one, subscribe to our YouTube channel and share it with everybody you know. Also, send our reports to your state and federal representatives and demand that they protect the electric grid and protect your family and community. And donate to your family's security. Select Secure the Grid Coalition from project designation at the Center for Security Policy's website, and you can make a tax-deductible donation to help us protect your family. Thank you very much, and I appreciate you watching.